Texas defense. And, one of the things that bothers me about the Texas defense last season, and it was a great turnaround, by the way. It's historically one of the greatest turnarounds we've seen in the history of Texas football for a defense, because in 2021, that was one of the worst defenses in Texas football history. And now you're talking about a top 30 defense last season. And part of it was Gary Patterson. All right. No doubt. You've got to give PK some credit. Gary Patterson, he is in a catbird seat position. I don't know if he's coming back. But yeah, anytime the defense played at a high level, people gave Gary Patterson credit. And every time the defense did not play at a high level or disappointed in some way, then, which wasn't a lot, by the way, people would throw out PK's name. So they would only talk about Gary Patterson when the defense was playing well, and they would bring up PK when they saw something subpar about the defense. But PK didn't care. He's an unselfish guy, so give him a lot of credit, because from what I can hear and what has been reported, he was not disgruntled about that at all. As a matter of fact, he welcomed it, and he welcomed it because he needed it. He miscalculated the Big 12. The Big 12 is an ever-evolving league, right? It's constantly evolving. The Big 12 is now, at this time, it is a running league cross-dressing as a passing league. And I think PK was listening to all the old, kind of folklore about the Big 12 and how it was terraformed by the air raid, and it was. And at one point, it was an air raid league and producing some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, like Patrick Mahomes. Hell, Jalen Hurts is even considered a Big 12 quarterback. And Big 12 quarterbacks and air raid quarterbacks were lighting up the NFL for a little while too, right? You get Jared Goff in that conversation. So with the trickling up of those concepts, the Big 12 is an ever kind of evolving league, because now it's evolved. And the reason why, just a quick short lesson, the reason why it evolved into being now kind of a running league, cross-dressing a passing league, is pretty simple. It's because the teams were getting basically blitzed offensively. They were getting lit up offensively with the vertical passing game. And the natural adjustment is, I'm backing my safeties up. I'm going to back my safeties up, and I'm going to go play a lot of two high safeties. That's having two deep safeties. That's your cover fours. You'll play your two deep safeties. You can play a lot of split zone, where you can split half the field, play one coverage on one half, another cover on the other half. And you can play that in the split field, and it keeps the offense from being able to connect on those vertical shots down the field. But you have the numbers, like I told you, you have the numbers in the passing game, but that means you lose the numbers in the running game. And defensive coordinators were willing to die at depth of 1,000 cuts rather than, just a straight up, gunshot right to the face, which is what the deep shot represents. Like, man, that's boom, done. You're done. All right. So they figure, let's make them march the length of the field, handing off the ball 3-4 yards in a cloud of dust. That works better. And eventually offenses will get frustrated, and then maybe they'll decide to throw it, and then they'll throw it into coverage. And then that's how our defense will kind of stabilize. So the Big 12 turned into that. Matter of fact, the Big 12 went as far to have 3 high safeties at times, right? You even had teams like Oklahoma State and then Iowa State popularizing the 3 high safeties to get even deeper into the weeds. And with that happening, offenses decided, let's work smarter, not harder. Why the hell are we going to be running, passing the football into coverages where we don't have a numbers advantage, where they outnumber us and they can essentially double team different guys and take away the pass? No, work smarter, not harder. Let's run the football because we have the numbers advantage in the box. So teams started running it more. If you look, the Big 12 became more of a running league. And that just happened over, kind of a period of adaptation by the Big 12. And I actually predicted at the time, because the Big 12 used to be an air raid league, right? At one point, 75 to 80% of the league were running the air raid. That's coming back, by the way. Tech running the air raid now. TCU was running their version of the air raid. So there's some teams now that are running the air raid again in the Big 12. So, which means you'll see that evolutionary adaptation happen again. Because when defenses adjust to teams running the ball more, how do they adjust? They put that extra guy in the box. He's not deep. They put him in the box, and they go single high coverages, all right, with just one deep safety. Your cover 3s and your cover 1s, and you put the extra guy in the box. And now defenses have the numbers advantage in the box, but offenses have the numbers advantage in the passing game. And then they'll start to pass more. This cycle goes on and on. On and on and on and on. It'll go back and forth forever. All right. And matter of fact, it's happening in the NFL right now, because if you go look at the NFL right now, teams continue to increase their too high coverage looks. Right now, they're playing close to between 45 and 50% of their looks in the NFL are too high show looks, one of the highest numbers in NFL history since they've been monitoring this. So it's happening. Why it happening in the NFL? Why are they dropping safeties back in the NFL? Well, you got Patrick freaking Mahomes, who's got a cannon and he's chunking it deep all the time. You got Josh Allen, who also, just like Mahomes, he's got a cannon, he's chunking it deep. You got teams like the Philadelphia Eagles like to chunk it deep. A lot of teams, they want to throw it down the field. And with that in mind, teams are deciding, I'd rather, like the Big 12 defensive coordinators, I'd rather die the death of 1,000 cuts with my safeties deep and not let them get that vertical haymaker and force them to march the length of the field. There's a good chance somebody screws up, somebody makes a mistake. Give my defenders a chance to make a play. And that's why offenses are now going to quick game. 60% of the NFL's passing game, quick 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 game. That's hitches, slants, outs, right? Get out of your hands and a 3-step drop, all right? Boom, in and out. And that's because basically that's kind of taken over as the extension of the running game. But anyway, that's deep in the weeds. So the NFL and the Big 12 follow a very similar evolutionary adaptation. But this is what I want from Texas, and I want to see it from I was gonna say from Dan Quinn, but Dan Quinn's got nothing to do with it. They need to seek out Dan Quinn's help, I should say. But it's something that I actually want to see PK do, and I think Sark can reach out and help with this as well, because Sark is actually the one who's worked with Dan Quinn before, right? He's actually been there and worked with Dan Quinn. And the reason I love Dan Quinn's defense, there's a lot of reasons to love Dan Quinn's defense. It's probably my favorite defense to watch in all of the NFL. And it's the most opportunistic defense in the NFL. It's created 67 takeaways in the last 2 years, and that number has led the NFL in both years. It led the NFL 34 one year and 33 the next year. And they're the first defense to lead the NFL in takeaways in back-to-back years since the Steel Curtain defense, right? And you think to yourself, well, how do they do this? What's the key for Dan Quinn? And Dan Quinn, there's a lot to his formula, and I've been trying to break it down and study it. One of the first things that Dan Quinn does is Dan Quinn uses more 3 high safety defense than anybody in the NFL. It's not 3 high. It's actually just 3 safeties. They call big nickel, big dime. He's using 3 safeties. He uses a ton of these 3 safety looks. And what these 3 safety looks allow him to do is win the battle of the pre-snap disguise and the shell looks. With those safeties, those being movable chess pieces, you can continuously move them around the chessboard. And he does. Nobody has better pre-snap shell disguise looks than the Dallas Cowboys. Because those 3 safeties are everywhere. Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, Jaron Kearse. He puts them in the box. He puts them deep. They're in the slot. They're blitzing. He puts them out. If you're a quarterback, the pre-snap read never matches the post-snap diagnosis. Not with Dan Quinn. And also, in addition to him trying to confuse and discombobulate quarterbacks with the way he moves his safeties, he also twists and stunts and plays more games up front with his D lineman. For those who know what twist and stunt is, that's when you loop and try to switch your defensive linemen. So sometimes sometimes it's a cross, sometimes the defensive end and the defensive tackle. Sometimes you'll get them running a game or a stunt or a twist where they basically are twisting and stunting up front, replacing each other in responsibilities, trying to confuse the blocking scheme somehow. He runs more twists and stunts than anybody in the NFL. As a matter of fact, they ran more twists and stunts last season than any team in the NFL in the last 5 years. A lot of them just moving pieces around. And what does that do? Well, that confuses the blocking schemes. So the center who's setting the pass protection also understands that my pre-snap pass pro set, whatever protection I set, it may not match what the protection needs to be post-snap based on how many times the Cowboys are looping defenders on the defensive front and on the defensive line. So it is a defense built on creating chaos, confusion. Because the truth is, chaos and confusion, it is more likely to be advantageous to a defense than an offense. Offense works on what? Precision, accuracy, right? It's execution. Hell, offenses, they tell receivers to break on certain steps. Yeah, I want you to break on that slant route on that fourth step. Get that fourth. They practice breaking in and out on routes on a certain step. So if you're a DB, I just need to create confusion and chaos. That's why Dan Quinn, I think, wants to play more bump and run coverage. That's why they're bringing in Stephon Gilmore. I think he wants to play more bump and run coverage and get in the receivers' faces, and therefore creating little pockets of chaos and confusion everywhere on the field. My safeties are creating chaos with the pre-snap read. Your pre-snap read doesn't match your post-snap diagnosis because they're moving around. All right, the defensive line, the pass protection never really matches it never really is compatible with the defensive front, the rush or the pressure, because we're constantly moving guys around. They don't blitz a lot. There's a lot of twists and stunts and looping their defenders at the line of scrimmage and twisting them at the line of scrimmage, just trying to confuse the blocking scheme. And then you're going to add to that, I got corners that can disrupt timing and execution of the wide receivers by just getting their hands on them and rerouting them a little bit. And what is that going to lead to? Quarterbacks being confused because I need time to process it. My receivers, they're not open. I can't get through my progression because they're being rerouted to the line of scrimmage. Also, I'm a little paranoid about this defensive front coming at me because the pass protection that we set doesn't really match what I'm seeing coming at me. And oh, by the way, I thought that safety would be in the box. Turns out he's in the slot, and the safety that was deep is now down blitzing, and they rotate the other guy. And nobody rotates in their coverages pre-snap to post-snap like the Cowboys. So it's all just built on confusion and chaos. And when you're dealing with a precision, execution, timing, accuracy-based system like every offense is, just create confusion at every level. That's what the Cowboys do, and they do it better than anybody. And on top of that, my big belief about football has been the future of football is positionless football. It will just be guys who hybrids all over the damn field. And I think Dan Quinn, he is the leader. He's the leading mind in positionless football on defense. And he uses a lot of it. You're talking about Micah Parsons, of course, Sam Williams, Jaron Curse, Makiamu is in that category too. Marquise Bell is another guy they throw out there. Remember last year was Keanu Neal and different guys. I mean, he's been tinkering with this positionless football thing since his days in Atlanta. Devondre Campbell, who's now, I believe, with Green Bay, he was moving him around like he moves Micah Parsons around, and that was when he was in Atlanta. So he was thinking about it, and then the happy accident, the serendipity of him drafting Micah Parsons, the best positionless football player on defense, that's kind of the perfect storm, perfect combination. So that's why I love why his defense is built on confusion. With those hybrid defenders, what can you do with a hybrid defender? Move them around the chessboard. And football is just chess with people. Move them around the chessboard. You need more pieces like, I don't play a lot of chess, more pieces like the queen that can move around everywhere. Can the queen move around everywhere? I need to play more chess. But anyway, you get the point. All right. I made 2 chess references on the show today. I don't even play chess. All right. Anyway, so that's why his scheme is awesome. But this is how it fits Texas. Texas can't cause enough turnovers right now. They can't. They only had 14 takeaways last season. That was the bottom of the Big 12. And if you want to win the Big 12, you need to be taking the football away. You take care of the football, but you got to be able to take it away. There have been 6 times in the last 20 years that the Big 12 champion finished outside of the top 4 in turnover margin. And there have been 7 times the Big 12 champion finished first in turnover margin. Texas has taken care of the football pretty good, actually. They need to take away the football more. And I advise Sark to call Dan Quinn or to copy Dan Quinn's blueprint. It's brilliant. It is. Just cause confusion and chaos at every level. Disruption. And offenses hate that because they want execution and timing and accuracy and precision. Hand placement here. Offensive linemen, dude, they really calculate their steps till they punch. That's a real thing. It's like, all right, I got 3 steps and I'm going to punch. And JJ Watt always said, man, I just try to confuse them. He said, I used to always give them a stutter, and I'd always get high because I know it screws up their footwork. And when old lineman's footwork gets screwed up, then his hands get screwed up because they're step, 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 punch. Screw it up. Just screw it up, man. Chaos, confusion. And I think Texas needs to create more chaos, more confusion. Not enough of it. Maybe that's why they got Payam Sadat. They need more of that from PK. And it helps when you have hybrid defenders. Now, keep in mind, Texas does have three safeties they believe have starting, capability, right? They got Jalen Catalon. They got, of course, Jaron Thompson, the elder statesman, and Keaton Crawford. Now, everybody in the Big 12 is playing 3 high safety defenses and using 3 safeties because they realize the confusion and chaos it creates. And yet Texas has 3 of them. I need to see some of that. I saw a little bit of the principles of 3 high versus Texas Tech last year for Texas, but not enough. And they didn't really have, 3 starting caliber safeties. Now you do. Maybe that's something they can use. And it also can be a plan B, a contingency plan in case that field corner doesn't work out with Terrence Brooks. You can move Jahdae Barron out there and use your 3 safeties. Those are your 5 DBs. Dan Quinn can tell you how to do it. Or you can watch Iowa State. Now, the 3 high is different principles than Dan Quinn's 3 safety defense, but essentially you can say they're very similar in, I would say, in their rudimentary principles, in terms of them just trying to create confusion and move around and be movable pieces on the chessboard. Texas needs to adopt all of that. They need to play more bump and run. They want to. Sark has already said that. They need to run more twists and stunts up front. And by the way, this fits, right? Run more twists and stunts up front. Because who are the best pass rushers for Texas? Even Sark said it's Byron Murphy and it's Anthony Hill, the young kid coming off the edge like DeMarvion Overshown last year. He's a natural pass rusher. Okay, if that is the case, how do you create advantageous one-on-ones for an interior defensive lineman? Twists, stunts, get him matched up on their weakest offensive lineman. And interior defensive linemen have a tougher job because usually they get the double team a lot easier. They get the double team. It's a natural double team. But the center gets a little piece of them while the interior lineman gets a little piece of them. It's a little easier schematically to double team that guy, free him up, twist and stunt. So it helps in that regard as well. You got 3 safeties. Hopefully you figure out who your corners are so you can play more bump and run. And we know Ryan Watts loves to play bump and run, right? So the reason that Dan Quinn's defense is the most opportunistic in the NFL is because he creates confusion and chaos everywhere. More twists and stunts and games up front than anybody else. Uses more 3 safety looks than anybody else. And I think now getting Stephon Gilmore, they want to play more bump and run too. So they can just totally discombobulate and confuse quarterbacks and frustrate them. Texas can replicate some of that. And I think that because it confuses quarterbacks so much because nothing looks the same pre-snap to post-snap, and he ends up throwing interceptions as a result. Or, think about the RPO now, right? The RPO is designed to count the box or count the numbers in the box. If you have the numbers advantage in the box, you hand it off. All right. If you don't have the numbers advantage in the box, you throw the pass. Dan Quinn is confusing that. He's confusing that motion. He's confusing that concept every time opposing teams try to run it by moving the safeties around. That's what 3 high safety defense does too. That's why it matches up well with Sark a little bit. We'll dive into that probably later on this week. But that's what I want from Texas. I need more takeaways from that defense. They need to be more opportunistic. And the way to do it is confusion, chaos. And I did see PK said he's going to start blitzing more. So there you go.